All right, hi everyone. Today we are going to continue examining Roman government. We'll be doing it all this week as we've been doing so far. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to identify what the idea of veto power is, what that word means, and what that power can do, and how it balances government. And then it says here we'll be talking about involvement. And so you'll be analyzing the responsibilities of citizens and the idea of civic duty. So let's get into it. We've looked at how this, during this week, we've examined how this is a three-branch form of government, the Roman Republic, same as the United States of America's form of government. We know that those branches were created for balance, to balance the system. And we know that the Patricians allowed that third branch to really enter into the Roman Republic because they had to make a compromise since the plebeians far outnumber the patricians. So it was a compromise to give a large group of Roman people a say in government. And it had to be a fair say in government. It couldn't just be, like we talked about on Tuesday, it couldn't just be like they said, oh, yeah, sure, you have a say in government, and then they were constantly ignored. No, there were actually powerful rules and laws in place for these plebeians. So their branch, the third branch of government, their branch of government for the plebeians, the lower class, is called the Assemblies and the Tribunes. And we examined what those two titles, those jobs are, what those groups of people are. And so we know that if two branches consist of patricians, which means the branch of the magistrates, which are elected officials with the leaders of the city, the consuls, and then we know that we have the second branch is the Roman Senate. Both of those branches consist of the upper-class patricians, the nobles. And so it has to be balanced with a third branch. And you might be asking, if two branches consist of patricians, then how is it balanced when only one branch is made up of plebeians? And again, that's because there's extra powers involved for that third branch, for the lower-class common people plebeian branch. So tribunes, as we now know, who are the equivalent of a consul, except tribune would come from the lower class of plebeians, so tribunes who are plebeian consuls, essentially. So they have the power of what's called veto. This is something that the President of the United States has the power to do, and it's the same exact term. And we'll talk a lot more tomorrow and next week about the similarities between our form of Republican government and that of the Roman Republic, but this veto power exists in our country today, in our Constitution. So veto, it means to prohibit, which really means to stop the actions of other government officials. So the tribune has the power to say to magistrates or consuls that they don't believe an action is legal or should happen, or they don't believe that that action is in the best interests of the plebeian class, which is why the tribune is elected to represent this group. So this, right away, right off the bat, the veto power gives an immense amount of power to the plebeian branch of the Roman government. If it was just three branches, then it would always generally, you could imagine being the two patrician branches, the magistrates and the Senate, teaming up and outvoting the plebeian branch called the Assemblies and Tribunes, except these tribunes have this power, for one thing, of veto. So it can really stop those patricians, those consuls, right in their tracks if they don't like something. So we have this illustration here of veto. Roman officials are allowed to counter the rulings of their colleagues. To counter them means to stop them from going any further, from becoming law. Okay. And so why are these extra powers given to this third branch, the plebeian branch? It leads to more balance. The veto power made the tribunes very powerful in Rome's government. But again, just like with the magistrates branch and a consul, the consuls serve for 1 year to stop them from becoming too powerful. It's the exact same thing with the tribune. The position of tribune for a plebeian, to stop them from abusing their power, they remain in office for only 1 year. And again, that's exactly like a consul. Okay? And so Latin was a group of people that lived in the area of Rome. The Latins lived there as a tribe before the Romans really got their civilization together, and the Romans had adopted the language of Latin. So Latin is the language of the Romans, And in Latin, the term veto doesn't mean prohibit. That's what that really translates to today. But the the direct translation of veto in Latin is I forbid. I forbid something to happen. So really what you have is certain Roman officials just saying, you know what, like, you might have voted on this and made this your decision, but we as the branch of elected officials that represent the plebeians are vetoing it. We're saying that's not fair. I forbid that from occurring. Whether it's a law, a rule, they can't declare war without the tribunes and the assemblies. So you really have to see that this is a form of balance of power, so that the plebeians aren't just given a say in the government. And so you see here you have the Magistrates Branch and what they're allowed to do. And we've gone through this already. This part's review. You have the Roman Senate, and then you have the Assemblies and Tribunes. And in order for the magistrates and the Senate not to dominate government and just say, well, we vote together and the Assemblies and Tribunes have no power, that's why they get the Assemblies and Tribunes. They not only represent the plebeians, but they have the power to approve or reject laws. They get to elect magistrates. They have the power to declare war on behalf of the city of Rome. And they have this really important veto power right down here. So these ways, approving and rejecting laws, which ties into veto, electing magistrates, declaring war, and the veto power as a standalone power, those are 4 really important ways that this government of 3 branches is balanced. The magistrates and the Senate often have more things in common because they come from the upper class patricians. In order to counter that weight, kind of like you have a scale, and you want to weigh something equally, they gave these extra powers to the assemblies and the tribunes so that the group representing the plebeians actually had some teeth. They actually had an ability to, stand up and say, like, okay, but we as a group don't agree with this, and it's not going to go any further. If you don't have an ability for these assemblies and tribunes, for these plebeians that are represented in government, to stand up for their people, then there's really no point in having this 3rd branch. So that branch had to mean something. Okay? And so when we started this lesson here, it said balance and involvement. Well, balance comes down to veto power and the abilities of this 3rd branch, what their powers are. The second part of that is involvement, and that here has to do with civic duty. This is a big part of what you will be learning in 8th grade social studies. So to start with, civic duty is a person's duty or responsibility toward their city, in this case, Rome, their civilization of Rome, okay? Rome's form of government as a republic was only possible, a republic is only possible if it's a true republic, because the citizens of Rome participated in this government. And by doing so, those Roman people elected magistrates, they elected tribunes. Right off the bat, you have involvement from the people. Last week we examined a republic means representation. Representation means that people are elected to represent what you want. And that means that by electing someone to represent you, you are participating in your form of government by electing these people. Okay? And so the responsibilities of someone that's a citizen within Rome, and we're going to talk about who a citizen is in Rome in a moment, but your civic duty is your responsibility. And so the responsibilities of citizens in the ancient city of Rome, were to vote. That you were expected to vote in elections when you were allowed to vote, and that would be people that are allowed to vote were allowed to vote. You were expected, as a responsibility, to attend assembly meetings. Okay, and that's where new laws, new rules, maybe declaring war, declaring or wanting peace, those issues would come up in these very important assembly meetings with other people, and citizens, not just elected officials, were allowed to speak at these meetings if you were qualified as a citizen. And then patricians felt it was their civic duty, their responsibility, to hold public office because they believed that they were helping to run the city as a wealthy, influential person. You can also imagine that some of this is they want to have their hand in the power seat, and they want to help guide things in the Roman Republic. They want to help be part of the decision-making process in the city of Rome itself. However, Everyone that's a citizen has specific responsibilities in Rome. The only way that a republic can work, just like in the United States of America, is if the first way that people get to have a say is by voting. You have the largest impact that you can have is by taking part in voting in elections when they're available. So who is a Roman citizen? Well, Roman citizenship was held by all patrician and plebeian men. Men, so it's gender specific. All patrician and plebeian men. And it extended to a few of the privileged foreigners, usually local leaders and aristocrats, people that are wealthy, people that are eventually conquered, become citizens as well. Okay? Let's note who's not a citizen. You can see in this little diagram here. Patricians at the top. The lower class would be the plebeians, but both of those groups, both of those social classes are the citizens. Non-citizens are women and slaves. And again, we use this triangle, this pyramid shape, because it shows you there are less patricians, there are more plebeians, but the majority of people are going to make up that bottom tier, that bottom rung of women and slaves. Citizens could vote, but for the privilege of voting and taking part in government, you were required to pay taxes, and you were required to serve in the military. Okay? And patricians and plebeians held different levels of citizenship, which allowed patricians to really hold more power in society. When you're upper class, you are more influential. That's why when you're more influential, you can become a magistrate. You can become a consul. Only the people in the patrician class can take part and be represented by the Magistrates Branch or by the Roman Senate. Okay? So, in review, veto power is the power to stop something from occurring from another government official. It could be a law. It could be trying to declare war. If a magistrate or a consul tried to declare war, very easily the tribune would veto that act, that rule, that action, because right here it says this branch declares the war. Okay? Your civic duty is your responsibility. We as Americans have a responsibility to know what's going on in current events, to know what's going on with elections, and I mean, laws that are passed affect your life now and in the future. And so when you guys are 18 years old, it's really important that you understand that you are identified, male or female in our country, as a citizen. And as a citizen, you are expected to participate in government. And I always say that if you want to complain about things but you don't vote and participate in government, you really have no place to be complaining, because you do have power. You do have a role in government. Just like ancient Romans were expected to vote in elections. They were expected to attend assembly meetings. That's why during Win sometimes, and when we have a chance in the morning, I'll say, watch CNN 10 if you don't owe me anything, because I want you guys to know what's going on with your current events, because you do have this responsibility to participate in your government. Okay?